Hello and welcome to the latest Archline XP webinar. My name is Zoltán Tóth. Today we are going to talk about roof and roof design. Since it's quite a huge topic, we decided that we are going to devote 2 separate sessions to discuss this. So for today we are going to talk about the basics, how to create simple roof structures and how to edit them. So what we have in that regard, let's take a look.
Sorry, there was no sound, but let's start over.
Yes. Yeah, so what I was just telling is that now we are going to talk about what Archline actually is. For those of you who are already familiar, this might be a good refresher. For the rest of you, let's talk about what Archline actually is. So we always say it's a 3-in-1 design software, 3 being architecture, interior design, and furniture manufacture. Today, obviously, we are mostly going to focus on the first aspect, architecture. It is a BIM software, so it has all the components which can be used to create a BIM-related documentation. We are going to talk about this in detail where it's relevant. The point is that everything what we are going to do would be contained in one single file, so there would be no need to exchange drawings, or even though you could, there's no need to store your things in separate places. You would have everything in one documentation.
Yeah, and the big point is that when you communicate with others, you will communicate your building, not just the drawings, just as you mentioned. Of course, obviously you will always also create the drawings themselves, but you actually develop the building itself. So whenever you create a roof or you create other building parts, that building part will be like a wall in the other software. If you communicate between BIM software packages, then whenever you open an IFC file, for example, in Archline, you will see a wall. And when you export your model from Archline to a third party, you will see a wall in the other software as well.
That's right. And speaking of collaboration, we are able to import data and exchange data with other software products. That means that it might happen every now or then when you're working in one project that you're not working on your own, or maybe you're using separate software products. Yeah. So you're able to exchange data between these platforms. That makes work much easier because collaboration is becoming very smooth.
Yes, that's right.
So actually, one other thing that we always add here is that our program takes you from 2D drafting to 3D, and that's something that we are going to talk about in detail. But what's important here in this slide is actually we are pairing the software with tutorial and webinar materials like this one. So we know that switching to a new software and learning this method, it takes a lot of time and practice. But we are trying to make it better and easier by providing material like this one. So without further ado, let's talk about what we have in here. So we have a project which is provided by one of our clients, right?
Yes, and we are very grateful for that. And this building, it's actually a couple of buildings. One at the left bottom side, those are the small buildings which I will use today. And 2 days later in the following session, because this is a two parts webinar, today we cover the basics, how the building element of the roof builds up, how you can customize it, how you can save it for later use in new projects, and how to set up the angles or different pitches of the roofs, and actually how to design the roof itself. And in the following session we will talk about all the other parts like the roofs, the dormer parts, the roof windows, gutters in detail, and also some decorative items, and also the structure itself. And now today we will cover how you can set up the structure, but we don't go deep into the structure settings. Next session we will do that
Yes.
in detail.
So let's start with the roof design essentials. So how do you get started? What are the most important things to consider? How do you get started on this project, for instance?
Well, let's dig deeper into this project a little bit. So just as I mentioned, there is a couple of buildings here at the top of the hill. Here one which is a like detached dwelling, and there's this. These are like sketches here, and this is where I will work now.
Like a conceptual stage, right?
Yeah, the concept drawings. And if I go back to the 2D drawing, you will see that some parts of these drawings are grayed out, and it's simply because in this project, the designer decided to use separate buildings. The logical individuum of this item called the building allows you to set up one drawing as one building, another drawing as another building, and you can combine them into one project, and you can work on larger projects like this. So what you see here now, this single building is highlighted, and this is where you can work. This is what you can select. This is what you can edit. I will work on that later. And if I would like to work on this, I need to go to the to the settings of the levels, the floors. Here I can see these are my floors, and actually there is a button here where you can set up or you can switch between the buildings if you already have existing ones. By default, the software will always create at least one building in the project, so that will be called like default building. And if you would like to, you can rename those buildings, you can add new ones, and you can remove that content if you want. Actually, there is one called the surrounding now, and that contains these tiny buildings, so I just click on that. This way I'm actually switching to that building, and when I click OK...
It's pretty similar to the floor selector itself.
Yes, so. yes. Actually, it happens the same way. You just select the building itself, you say OK, and then now, as you can see, the software is working on something, and this means you can actually separate your models into several parts, and you can also focus on what to see in the 3D, and this happens here. With this 3D update button, there is the build 3D model button here. And this allows you to set up, either you would like to see only one floor, all the floors, and all the buildings. So this way, now whatever I do, I will see always the full content, the full project. But if it's a large project, or if you just would like to focus on that single building that you're working on, you can just disable this all buildings switch, and then you will see only those parts appearing that are highlighted, that are editable in front of you in the drawing.
That's right. So what are the first steps here? Once you have the building selected?
So now that the building is selected, now I'm waiting that the software is updating the 3D, and that now I'm able to access the content. Let me just quickly go here and show you a few 3D views that I have set up, and I will also turn off the shadows for now because I don't need those yet. This we will need later. So I will just quickly turn off the shadows. Let's just go switch off both, and it's a bit clear. And I just go to the side buildings view, which I have saved earlier, and it's here, this one. So I will work on this. These roofs were created with the roof tool, either using the automatic tool, which we will cover today, or you can also build roofs, roof plane by roof plane, and this method we will explain in the following section. The following session, and today we will just work with the roof pitches, how you can use the survey data, which you just highlighted the image before. We will turn back to that, and we will discuss it in detail. So now to clear this up, I just remove this roof, and now we can see that the roof is removed from the 3D. It's of course removed from the 2D as well. Let me just focus to this part here, and this is where I will start. Now, most of the time, or in many situations, you won't work on angled drawings like this. You will work on perpendicular and horizontal, vertical drawings many times. But if it happens, it's actually nothing difficult. You just go and use the roof tool, and either you use the roof shapes. These are predefined tools to easily create a flat roof or an open gable or something else. And just go with this, and in that case, you can just align your drawing to the current content, and then you just
the predefined shape automatically appears.
Yes, and as you can see, the software will tell you how the roof plane will build up. And once I click now, the software will automatically create a roof with the default settings. Now, there is one thing here, and that's what we see, that the roof is not really in connection with the 3D structure.
Right.
We will cover this a little bit later. So this is what you will see when you create the roof itself. Now let me just go back and remove this roof, because this is, you know, this is happening when you work on really simple roofs. But if you have some complex shape, something which is non-symmetrical, or it has some specific features, or an L shape or something like this, like in this case, you can go and use the roof tool, and there is something called the auto roof. Now the auto roof comes with the default behavior where you can actually select currently created walls, and the software will automatically recognize the outer contour of those walls, and it will auto draft a roof on that. That's why we call it an auto roof.
So what do? You go ahead and select the walls one by
I can
one.
either select them, or if I just would like to draft it on my own, because for any reason I just would like to pick the points by myself, I will go with this polygon option here, and then I just, you know, click on usually on the outer contour, but this really only determines where the roof planes are attached and how the roof is drafted. It's not that much important to be on the external side. Usually it's the external side. So now I have an automatic roof. As you can see, it's already existing in the 2D. I have a preview in the 3D, but it's not existing in the 3D yet.
Yes.
It will once I hit OK, and then the roof is created here in
with the
3D
default
space,
settings, right?
With the default settings. Now, what can I change here? There are quite a lot of things that I can do here. Now, first things first, if I go back to change the settings, I can set up the position of the roof. Like, for example, I can tell where the wall height is, what I can see from inside. This is value F. I can say where the bottom part of the roof is. That's value C. As you can see, when you click on any of those, you can determine that value. And the reason why the rest is grayed out is because once you determine this, it determines all the rest. So you only need
everything
to know
else
one
is,
of those.
is sort of updating automatically.
Yes. So the software, based on the settings that you already have, is automatically recalculating the 3D shape and the 3D position of the roof based on the contour that you have created and based on the angles, which I will cover soon. So this is how you can build it up. Of course, when you work with these roof shapes, let me just go back to the default, you can also set up something what we call a style. The software comes with built-in styles, not only in case of the roofs, but in case of the walls, slabs, and all the rest of the building parts. Styles are actually names which you can use to store all the content, all the settings that, like in case of a roof, the settings of the thickness, the material,
other
the
properties, it could be anything.
and everything. Yeah, and even of course the beam parameters.
Now, one thing with styles, that's something that we always talk about, is that these are not tied to this project, or they can be. So if you want to tie this style to this project,
yeah,
you can do it. So in case you send this project to another colleague of yours who uses Archline, they can access the same styles. But you can make this into a global style, for instance, when you can carry on with you, even if you change to another computer, you can always carry your styles with you.
Just as you mentioned, styles can be exported and imported. So working in we are working together on a project in 2 separate offices. I just created a good roof style that I think will be fine with that design. I just export. I don't have to send the whole project. Of course, I can do that, but I can just export that one single file, only the content of this roof. Send it to you. You can import it, and then you can use the same settings, and this makes life a lot easier.
That's right.
When we work with those same settings.
So what's the next step?
So let's talk about, so this is how you can store the settings. Now I will just quickly show you what comes by default with the software. Now there is one roof setting which is called the simple roof. If I double click on it, this means I'm activating it, and I update. This is what you can see. This is the simple roof shape that the software is shipped with. And you can find something that's called the complex roof with tiling layer only. So if you double click on that and update, you will see something which is having a lot more detail in it. But going back to our default roof shape, which we will start with today, and I'm closing the styles now. I can show you how the roof structure itself builds up. So you will see that there are pages here now with these settings grayed out, those are the eaves purlin, the rafter, and whenever I click and enable any of those options, I will be able to click on the page itself and set up the eaves purlin, set up the rafter, set up the middle purlin, or any other settings that I'm about to set here. I can go and click on the page and set up the cross section or the you know, the layout of the rafters, or
how they are represented
the material
in 2D.
Yeah. And what's important here, that as you can see, that for example, talking about the rafters, if I set up a rectangular profile, I can set up the beam gap, the distances between the beams. There is always a description here, like a detailed drawing explaining what value is for what sort of reason. And you can also change the endings, and you can also set up frames, like you can set up a main frame and you can set up a subframe and so on. So you can, this way you can set up quite a complex structure. Not only for wooden roof structures, this is for the default settings are for wooden structure, but you can also use them for glass roofs or steel structure or something like that.
Or if you just want to have a flat roof, the structure would be the same, right? So you can use the same elements to...
Many times, yes. It really depends on what you are about to achieve. If it's having a frame system, you will use the frame system. Either it's called rafter or something else. If it's in the same direction, you will use the same setting. I did not mention that the material that we see here is actually also on the front page, the general properties. You can set up what's on the side and what's on the bottom. And also when we talk about the roof styles, now this we will cover later in detail in the following session, but now it's enough just to talk about that. Like there is a simple roof setting when the software is not literally generating the tiles themselves, because you know that's a lot of surfaces, but sometimes it's necessary, so you can enable that. But by default, the software is only applying a texture, nice texture, like as we can see here now. So it's not in 3D, the software is not calculating the amount of tiles, only the surfaces, but it's good enough for, like at least for the conceptual
for representation,
visuals,
that's right.
Yeah. And if I would like to go further in detail, then I can do that, and I can just enable all the rest of the options. And those materials are something that you can set here. And also, just as we covered in previous sessions, you can bring in new materials, new textures, and if you find a nice photograph or a new texture file online of the roof, should it be like a sheet, like a metal sheet or something like that, you can use that as well.
Yes.
So going back to the rafter settings. So see, now I already set up the eaves purlin, the rafter, or the ridge board. I enabled them. So if I click on update, I expect them to be visible.
Yes, but they are not. So
But they are
what
not.
gives?
So, well, this is for a setting, because you know in the design sometimes you would like to set up these items, but it's a matter of decision whether you would like to really see them and intersect them or document them or not. And that's some setting that you can set up on the main page in the general properties. So if there is only the roof layers visible in 3D,
Yes, then the
this is what we
structural
will
elements
see.
won't be visible.
Yes. So what I need to set up is that I need to enable roof rafters updates. Now they are visible. And as you can see, now there are roof layers in the 3D, but not the detailed layers. There is another setting here. So if I enable this, then I will get a different result.
I see. So we started from a simplified view, and now we are going more towards the...
Simply just enabling additional details.
But here's the thing, when the view is simplified, the structural elements are still there, right?
Yes.
They are just hidden. So it's not that it...
Yeah, so the difference here is that you can enable and disable the visibility of these items without destructing the structure that you already created. So you don't have to erase these items, you just disable the visibility, and that's it. So I just enabled this, and see, now there is an interesting thing here. I enabled to have layers, but I only see one single layer and none of the others. And the reason to that is that if I go to the layers and geometry, that's it here, I can see that, well, actually there are two layers here. One of them called roof tile, the other has no name, only materials and the thickness. And the reason it's not visible, it's because it's created like a non-visible. This last option is making it visible in 3D or not. So, for example, this is only cavity or something like that. In that case, you just simply disable the visibility of that layer. You can build up a visible layer, an invisible layer, an invisible layer. So you can build up a real structure like it is in some case in case of the roof structure as well. So this way you can set up how the layers are, how the structure is created. And there is one more thing that is necessary to be able to set up a proper roof structure, and by default it is there. You don't have to tweak it, but in any case you need, you can. And that's how the bottom of the rafter is aligned with the bottom of the layer, which is indexed here.
So you can like offset the
Yes.
distance between.
So now this setting is actually telling me that the bottom of the second layer, which is invisible,
which is the air cavity,
is aligned to the bottom of the rafter, which is
Yes.
now correct because this way I have a proper representation. But whenever I need to change this, I think we will go a little bit deeper in the next session
Yes.
about how this works. Then I can obviously do that. So I can set up the layers, I can set up the structure, I can make them visible or I can turn them off. I can set all these things into the styles, or I can just go with the default styles and worry about the settings later. And at the end, what's also important is how the roof is in connection with the world, actually with the walls.
Yes, actually, we are going to touch upon this in detail, but we started this discussion by highlighting that now the walls are like reaching over the roof. So this is
Yes.
where you can actually set up where the roof actually cuts the walls, right?
Yes, and now the default setting here in this case is that the roof should cut everything on its own floor. That means if the roof was drafted on a level where the walls were created, then once the walls start and reach the bottom of the roof, it will automatically cut it. But if that wall is coming from another floor, like from very much below, like from the garage or something like that, it can be really tall, but it will just pass through the roof because it's not coming from the same floor. So if I would like to just simply keep it simple and say that, okay, whatever meets the roof, it should be cut by the roof, I just use this option, the all roof option, and then I click OK, and then the software should cut the roofs, the walls, but it's not happening. And there is another reason to that.
Yes.
By default, the software is trying to keeping the project as up to date as possible. But there are some things that could take a few seconds or something like that. So the software is not stopping you. It's just doing the changes, and whenever you want, you can just click on the 3D hammer here, this quick 3D model. Just click here, and then you update the model with the current settings, and then the miracle happens when the walls are cut by the roof, because now the software is considering all connections between the structure, and once it's done, as you can see, it's disappearing.
That's right. So this way you have a direct command on when you want to update the 3D model, and that conserves some processing power from your computer.
Yeah, and remember we talked about the 3D representation and the 2D representation. There is another thing that we should consider, and this is how the roof looks like now in 2D, and whether we like it or not. And that's something that we can, again, control in case of the roof. We can go into the roof settings, like here. And then in the roof settings dialog, you can see something, it's called the Show Beams 2D representation. And if I disable that, I can just hit OK. And now the software represents the roof simple in 2D, but complex in 3D.
It's not lost, you just disable the visibility.
Just as in case of the other things. So instead of just switching off all the elements, there is one main switch, and that's called the 2D visibility of the beams. Actually, the software is calling everything beam inside the roof, which is like a rafter,
a structural
or something like
element.
That, a structural element. So if you disable that, you will still see it happening in the 3D, but you won't see the content appearing in 3D. In 2D. There is another thing that I think it's a good thing to know about. If I disable this setting here, and I update the content, I can visualize the structure only, which is also something interesting when you would like to represent the building like in detail, or you would like to make an interesting render or like an axiometric drawing about this, this could be very useful. Now, talking about these items here, we will cover these a little bit more detailed, but let me just give you at least one glimpse of how you can tweak the roof structure, how it works. And it happens here, like for example, now I have this, which is called the ridge board. Now, this ridge board is set to support the rafters instead of being in between the rafters. Some countries use this, some countries use that. Some structure is for this, and the others are for that. So you can use it. You can set up the settings in the ridge board setting, and you can go there. And as you can see, there is a value B here.
Yes.
And this determines the position of this ridge board, whether it's a ridge board or something else in between the items here. So once I change this here, let me just change it to 0.16, for example, and update. See, now it's coming up.
And don't forget that every time you do something like that, you can save this into another style.
Yes.
So if in your country it works differently, then you can just set it up and save it accordingly.
Yes, yes. Stylized roof workflow is I think, quite handy and useful once you work at least 2 or 3 different roof types. So now once we have this, let's just go back and cover it up a little bit. So we talked about the general properties, structure, layers, cutting of the other parts,
right.
and also the projections, how it's the layers and the projection with the walls are combined together. There's one thing that I did not cover, which is the pitch and shape. And for that reason, I think I will just go back to the simple representation of this roof. Let me just enable this and disable this and this. Update. So now I have this simple roof representation. And then let's talk about how the roof pitch setting works. Now that's here in the pitch and shape. And as you can see, the roof 2D here is aligned the same way as it is in the original drawing. So this helps
on the
you
floor plan,
finding the proper orientation, how it's set up. So how can I change that? If I click on any of those roof planes, I can see their pitch and whether they are hipped or gable end or something like that. So if I, for example, if I would like to make this roof plane disappear like an open end, I should click on it and say that this is a gable end. Update, and then now this is what happens here. Let's just do the same thing with this here. Again, I just click here and I say, okay, this should be a gable end. Update. And now this is what I see. Let's click OK.
It's taking shape one roof plane at a time.
Yeah, so this is how you can do that. But of course, if you would like to change the overall pitch of the full roof, because it's like a taller roof or something like that, high-pitched roof, then you just go to the settings, again, go and find the pitch and shape, select any of those roof shapes that you can select, and there's an important thing here. You can actually select a roof plane which is not visible as well. See, I have disabled this roof plane, but it's still there. The plane count is still 6. There
also, you can navigate
1, 2,
back
3,
to the
4,
the
5,
place.
and 6. They are still there. So in that case, if I would like to go back and I don't know, for any reason I would like to turn this back to hip, I can just do like that and it will go back. So disabling this, update. And then going back to the original topic, so how to change the pitch of all the planes, I can just come here and say that, well, this should be something around like 30 degrees or something, and I apply this for all the planes, update, and then the software will make changes for all the planes which are not disabled. And this way the full roof is changed. I click OK, and then now I have a taller roof. And again, considering this here, there is no updated wall roof connection yet, which is for 2 reasons. One is that sometimes, like in the other case here, the wall is simply not tall enough. It's only coming up to this side, so I can just click here and say change height, and I don't know, elevate it to something like this, and then it will solve itself.
Yes,
or
because of the automated cutting, so you just need to elevate its height and it cuts.
Yes, that's right. And the other way around, if I'm sure that this is actually something that should happen there, but it's not happening, again, I just click on the 3D update, refreshing the 3D, wait a little while, and then the software will update the changes.
That's right. Now, I think this is the time when we could talk about what happens if you already have survey data available.
Yeah.
So it might happen, but now we were just coming up with the numbers, but every now or then, especially if you're working on locations which are being refurbished or renovated, you already have some survey data based on which you can work. So what happens if you already have some data available, how you can utilize that?
Well, actually, there is two ways of making the survey. One is when you go outside and you survey the roof from outside, the outer shapes of the roof planes, that you can do as well. But many cases happens the same way as we describe it now, and there we have a figure for that. And there is when you go inside the building and you see marks of the of how the roof is penetrating the interior.
Yes.
And there is usually that little tiny wall part, which is now 1 meter tall in our case. And there is at least the horizontal and the vertical component of this slanted. It's like a triangle if you really draft it on the drawing like this. So we can measure all these here, and the longer the value of this horizontal and vertical component you can measure is the best, because in that case the lesser the error is when in case of few millimeters in a short range, it's making a bigger mistake. But at least it is something that you can use to calculate the pitch. Now, the good thing here is that you don't even have to calculate this within Archline. So I'll just remember these values, or if I forget, please bring back this image.
I'm just going to open it up again.
So there is this roof, and there was the page about the pitch and shape. And here, as you can see, there is a value. So if I calculate it mathematically, what's the angle, I can just type it here, but I can't, or I don't want to. In that case, I just click here, and I can change the method of how the slope is given into the software. And the one is the percentage, and the other one is for this specific purpose.
Oh, okay. So it's like Pythagorean environment. So as long as you know the two sides of the triangle, you can calculate the angles, right?
I hope it's visible enough on the stream as well. But as you can, let me just describe. There is A/B here. It's written down. And there is A, which is the vertical part, and the B is the horizontal part. So if I remember properly, and I should say vertical per B, per horizontal, then I should give first the shorter one, which was 1.7, and the other one was 1.9. And just one side note here, keep this space in between the operator and the value, okay? Because Archline actually understands every input as a value. So if you say 1/2 without the spaces, the software will understand that you would like to say 0.5, because 1/2 is 0.5.
Oh yes, so it's going to be a fractional.
Yeah. So in that case, the software will divide 1 by 2. But if you keep these spaces here, then you tell that I have one value and there is another value, and you should use these to calculate the pitch of this roof shape. So if I just go there, now the software actually calculated that this was 41 point something. So if I just click update, now as you can see, it is a higher pitch.
Yes, but only on one roof plane.
Yeah, it's only on one roof plane, but still we can use this apply for all planes option, and I can click update, and then all the roof planes are automatically updated. So if I click OK, now we have this here happening.
So this is one scenario. It's very good that you show that when the 3D updates automatically. So in these kind of scenarios, it does update automatically. Whenever it doesn't, you just have to hit the 3D hammer. Now, what about other editing tools? What I'm mostly thinking of is how you can get these actually three roof parts together. So there's a huge gap. Yeah. How are you going to bridge that? So let's talk about the roof editing tools that we have. Without, if there's anything what you think is missing from the next couple of things we are going to show you, we are very likely to discuss that this Thursday on the second session.
Yes, but make sure that you comment it, and we will tell you at the end.
So if there's anything missing, then.
Yeah. So there is this roof. First, before we go on, let me just make it visually closer to this other one. So I just quickly find this material here, which is this one, and I just drag and drop it here, and I say that replace this material with another on this object here and here. So now they are visually similar. I could do the same thing by simply saving this as a style and then apply it to the other roof itself. But now that I have these, sometimes it happens that you would like to combine two different roofs because the roof is either so complex that you cannot just simply draft it by one roof. Because as you can see, if you have one roof, the auto roof, and that's the whole point of using an auto roof if you can, is that it's automatically creating the connections between the roof planes. But if I have one roof and I have another one, they are not automatically combined, and there's a reason to that. There's usually the design option that you can choose you would like to do that or not. So let me just try to combine them visually first. This roof plane itself, this roof complex shape itself is this one here on the 2D. So now if I click and try to enlarge it, I click here and I say I would like to offset it, I don't know, with a certain value like this. So now it's larger. And as I can see, it's intersecting the other roof nicely. And this is what we see from the outside. But from the inside, it's something.
Well, it's not the best result because it reaches in. So
yeah, so they are actually not meeting each other. They are actually just simply overlapping each other. So if I just would like to intersect themselves, then I need to use a specific tool for that. And that is called the info tool. Let me just try to align this like this. It will look nice. And then I just click here and here to further highlight it, and then I just click on the 3D rebuild, and this makes only these two items visible in the 3D.
So you can isolate the things that you want to work
still,
on.
of course, the rest of the project is existing, but now I can just focus on this problem. So the issue here is that I need to find where these planes meet each other and then kind of just, cut the rest
excess roof parts.
Yeah. So how to do that? If you already have these two roofs, then you just click on the roof and use the local menu, the context sensitive menu. And there you can find something called the info. And there is this intersection of two roofs. The other one is for simpler reasons, but now this is what we need. And then I click on the other roof, which is taking part in this meeting. And then now see, there is this line here drafted automatically. This is just a helper, so they are not intersected automatically. That's just a helper, and I can do whatever I want with this information.
This is just a polyline, right?
Yeah, that's just a polyline. As you can see, it's nothing 3D. It's just a polyline at the left-hand side. The software is telling me. So sometimes I even turn it to red to just see that, well, this is really just a draft line here. So how to use this information? First things first, I click on the smaller roof, for example, and I tell the software that I should actually cut off these parts. Now, there is one tool that you can use to chop off parts or punch holes into the roof, and that's the hole tool in the roof. So you can just go to the local setting and say that you would like to create a hole, and then just simply follow that contour along the edges of the original roof and the common part. And once that's done, the software will actually remove the excess part. Now, this dashed line, I will explain later. What we need to take into consideration is the solid line.
But now only one roof is actually trimmed. The other part is still there, so there's no transition from one to the other.
Yes, sometimes it's enough, because if I wanted this, then I'm done. But if, yes, I would like to go, if this is in use and inhabited or something, and I would like to pass from one roof part under to the other, then I just need to repeat this whole thing with the other roof, and then just use the hole, create hole, and then what happens now, I just simply follow the common parts and the edges of this other side of the roof, and when I'm done, then they are nicely joined together here in the 3D, as you can see here. So this is what happens now.
Perfect. So that's how you can trim the roof parts together.
and the rest is only the setting of the same thicknesses and so on. So if you still have some geometric issues, as you can see that there is a gap coming off or something like that, it's usually because you don't use the same settings. You just need to make them common, and then the software will work fine.
You mentioned that you're going to talk about the dashed lines and the solid lines, how they differ, and also there's another place where we could illustrate the hole cutting tool on the roof parts.
Yes.
If you could show that.
Yes, so now talking about first how what's the differences between these
Yes.
contours. Let me just use a simple example, and then we will go to the more detailed introduction. So now, as you can see here, clearly there is a dashed part and solid line part, which is always the case. Even if you just only see one, that means they are overlapping each other. But by default, you will have this outer contour and the inner contour. The inner contour is what we call the structural contour. This is what the software uses to draft the roof itself, and it's equally to the lines that you drafted when you created the automatic roof or the roof shape itself. This is why the dash line here follows the outer lines of my walls, because that's where I clicked, and here it's different. And the outer contour is the roof plane shape. Now, let me demonstrate quickly what's the difference between the two. I'm changing this edge. I'm actually inserting a node here by simply clicking somewhere. See, now the roof plane has changed, and this is how it has changed. There
So
is
that's
an
how you
extension.
can create extra overhangs or extensions or things like that.
Or some fancy contour or something like this is how you can do that. And if I do it the other way around, and I click here on this one, and I do the same thing, insert node, and about the same size, I just stretch it out, then the whole roof structure itself changes.
I see.
Because now I broke up this part here, and I told the software that there should be a plane here, there should be another plane here, another here. So this is how the roof will understand the changes in case I change the structural contour.
So that's how you can actually break up one roof piece into certain smaller segments. If you see this.
Yeah, let me just
the
quickly change
yes.
the building itself, because we will work here on this one. Okay, and yes.
I was just telling that if you want to create a shape like that one,
Yeah.
you can either, as we discussed, you can start with the auto-defined roof tool and adjust the pitch and shape until you end up with something like that. But if you realize that some of the planes are missing, that's how you can add them.
Yes, and in connection to what we just discussed, together with what you just told, you can actually combine a site survey measurement with the knowledge that we will cover in the following session, that you can actually build up a roof plane by plane when that's necessary. That's a little bit more, you have to work a little bit more on that, but sometimes it's just something that you
Yes.
cannot avoid. In that case, if you cannot use the auto roof for any reason, there is still the option to build the roof plane by plane. So I have actually just loaded this other building part. So here we can discuss partially the same things and a little bit about the new things, and that's how we can set up a roof above this part here. Let me just build up the 3D model, but in this case only this building part with all the floors of it.
That's another good tip to actually conserve processing power, so that just build up the things that you want to work on.
So we cannot see all the details of this project now, but only the ones that I'm interested in, and it's here, this one. So I'm about to create a roof shape like this to show how something like this is created. So first I select it and I erase it. And then let's just draft it by using the same tools here. So first things first, again, let's just go to the roof tool, use the auto roof, and there's this rectangle. I think that will be fine. And I just click on this edge, and I completely cover the whole part here. And then using the previous knowledge that we already had, I just simply go and set up the settings, or I just simply pick one of these settings, and I will actually today go with this one here. So I don't want to take time setting up all the rest of the details. Yes. See, there is this overhang, and this actually tells me how long the roof will stretch out from the contour that I have created. And I would like to actually set up a different setting for the pitch and shape on this edge. I would like to turn this to a gable end and turn this to a gable end, update, And
How do you make this into an asymmetric roof part? Because it is an asymmetric.
Yeah, it should be actually, as we can see that now it's. Let me just enlarge this. So it's the pitch is not correct, and the center is here, and it should be here. Yeah, in that case, there's two options. One is that you can actually draft a larger roof and cut off the rest, because this is how the original was created. Or there is another setting that I'm about to show, and this, you can actually elevate one side of the roof, and this way make it asymmetrical, because the roof is always building up the roof on the contour lines, and you can elevate one of the contour lines, and sometimes this is more useful. So talking about this, let me just change the roof pitch first. I think it's around it's around 20 or 22 or so, and let's just apply this for the whole roof. And then talking about this elevation, as you can see, there is this elevation of the reference line. And now I'm about to elevate the reference line. Let me just go back to the 2D, because I think this will be more informative. So this here.
What is the reference line?
The reference line is this, the dashed line, the structural line. So now I can only change the elevation of the reference line at 2 levels only, because I have 2 planes themselves, but the rest is turned off. But if I have more, then I can do them plane by plane. So I just click here, go to the details, say, okay, there's this pitch and shape, and I'm about to change this here, this one, and this should be elevated, I don't know, 1.8 or even more above the compared to the other one.
Yes. So
this
just
is actually
pushing it higher,
between
right?
the two. Yes, yes. So, but I think the proper value should be around 3 or something. So, in this case, this is what I end up with. And okay, and then this happens, and then now I can push back the whole thing below, which I can either do visually. This happens when I'm still in conceptual phase and I don't have, you know, values that I would like to use. I just would like to align them together to match. And if this happens, what happens now, it's because there are at the right hand side, as you can see, there are reference points, and the software is now sticking to those points, which is okay, because this is the guarantee that I can actually work properly when I would like to snap points to something else. But if I'm in this situation like this, it's not useful, not quite useful, because it's always jumping off. And in this case, I just turn off the object snap for a while, and then I can just easily graphically move it someplace else. And when I find the proper position, I just click, and then I turn this back on, because from the
you would need that later.
Yeah, from this point on I need it.
Now there are actually 2 details here what we could use to illustrate things that we just discussed. One is the cutout for the terrace.
Yep.
The other one is the overhang just above the entrance. So let's start with whichever.
Yeah, let's start with the hole, because that was the last time we created, so it's easy to remember. Now just go and select the roof, go to the settings, use the hole, and there is the create hole, and then you just follow the contours. This could be way more complex, but let's just keep it simple. I just draft a rectangle, and then that's what happens on the right hand side. So now we have nice opening to leave sunshine into this interior. And the other thing that we discussed here, it's a matter of choice what I do here. I can change the structural contour, inserting 2 nodes here, turn this into a curved edge, resulting, well, this cannot be done. Perhaps the roof shape would be something that cannot be drafted, so I just make it something smaller or something like that. So this is what happens. It's a completely different roof shape. It's now even not useful for me. So what I do, I just go back and go back and go back. And what I really want to do, I just would like to cover this like an extension of this roof shape here, not like a cone or something like that. So in that case, I just click here, I insert a node here, I insert a node, another one here. Sometimes I even use draft lines to mark the intersection of these points to create a helper line, and I just really would like to extend this to a certain value, and then it's already covered.
Perfect. Now that summarizes the editing tools, but let's talk about additional roof parts. And mainly what I'm thinking of are the chimneys and other objects. For instance, gutters and things like that. So How do we add these elements to the drawing that we have?
Well, one solution to create chimney, for example, is that if that is built above walls, then you can just drop the walls and then make sure that they're coming through the roof. Now, remember we talked about how the roofs are cutting or not cutting the walls, so this can be something that you can set up. Or you just simply, you can just cut a hole into the roof and make sure that the walls are coming off. There's another solution to that, which is the object solution. When you actually place this roof as one parametric object, and this is how this was done. If I go to the settings, as you can see, there are chimney objects built into Archline, and whenever you select any of these, you can find and go to these settings, and you can make changes to those settings. You can change the size, you can change the material, you can handle them as you would handle a chair or a column or something like that, like one individual object. And this is also something that works very well.
I know that there's one thing regarding objects that we have to know about, and that is namely with sections and elevation drawings.
Yes. By default, this we covered 2 sessions before when we talked about how you can create the sections, and the section by default hides the objects because the architectural section, at least. The architectural section is usually for other reasons, for structural reasons, and that's why it's hiding the cars and the chairs and the tables and everything else. And if you place your chimney as an object, it will be treated the same way as the rest of the object. So in that case, you just need to make sure that either you turn back this option on, or you create the chimney in another way when it's not interfering with that setting.
What about gutters?
The gutters are something that, again, there is 2 solutions to that. One solution is the old solution when you actually use objects to that, but that's difficult because in that case you have to find the proper size and so on. So that's something that I wouldn't do. There is another tool dedicated, and it's called the gutter, and it's actually under the roof part. It's called the gutter. It allows me to pick up an edge of that roof and tell what sort of gutter with what sort of cross section I would like to see there. Let's say I would like to go with this one, and I would like to change the reference line to not to be aligned to the bottom, but to be aligned to the side. And also I can change the height, the width, and the offset of this whole thing. And for example, I would like to vertically shift it like its height, so it should be minus 0.15. And horizontally it should be offset like, I don't know, let's just go with half of the width, and okay, and then now it should appear properly. I can just further push it back down,
yes,
or above.
So it creates you a parametric 3-dimensional object which you can customize. What about downspouts?
The downspout is a parametric part of the gutter itself. It's here on the second page, and by default the software will pick a path which you can change to something else, like a straight or one type, another one with this slanted part at the bottom, and it really depends what you set up here, the position and so on. But sometimes you really don't know where it should be. It should be in the center, definitely not. Somewhere on the side, but I don't know exactly where. So I just graphically set it up. I just click create, and I hit OK, and then I check whether it's okay. Well, this could be okay, but if I would like to move it further to the side,
probably out of the way.
Yes, I can just click here and I just say that, okay, move the whole downspout to a different position, or I can just move one segment, and I can even make this part longer, like this here. I just click on this part and on the arrowhead, and I just stretch it down. I can even type the value if I know, or just match a proper point in the 3D.
That's right. Now another huge part of creating buildings and then roofs. So far we were talking about the conceptual phase, but there comes the time when you have to create additional detailed drawings, and with that you have to make calculations, lists, and other kind of quantity takeoffs. So how does the software handle these?
Well, the listing is just as simple as in the other case. You can find this in the documentation part, and it's called the quantity takeoff. And whatever you have created, whatever detail in your project, the software will use that information and calculate the amounts, the length, and whatever you actually are listing. And so now I'm just going to the quantity takeoff. I would like to create an extra list of a building part, and then I can just disable all the rest because now I'm interested in the roof. and I can even export the beam parameters. Now, actually, we didn't talk about that, so
Yes.
let's just go back to that a little bit later. So let's say this is a roof consignation, and it will be an Excel file. Okay, let's just save that. And if you have Excel installed, the software will automatically open it up. It will always give you a summary at the first page, which is now the beam parameters of this project, and then
here come the numbers.
You know, the size, the surfaces of the roof, and all the details, the beam numbers, and the lengths, and the cross sections, and so on. This you can use for any sort of calculation that you would like to use, and that's needed by the government or
That's
any
right.
other.
You briefly mentioned beam parameters, so let's just talk about that for a second.
Yeah, the beam parameters are easily located by just selecting an item, and then you can just click on here, the beam parameters. All the items having beam parameters are appearing here, so even the walls and roofs and the windows can be found here. You can just click on beam parameters, and you can either just simply check the beam parameters, or you can add new beam parameters, you can change them, or this is where actually you will see beam parameters created in another software and imported as an IFC file, and you can just further edit it if you
So that's again for data exchange, because creating something is just one part of the story. You have to equip it with data which others can access.
Yeah, so it's not just a drawing, it's a building part.
So that actually summarizes what we wanted to talk about during the first session of how to create the roofs, the basics, the essentials. and knowing this, you will be able to embark on the second stage, which would be mostly about the structural elements.
Yeah.
So this Thursday, in 2 days, on the 9th of August, we are going to talk about what's under the tiles, really.
Yeah.
So how you can shift and move the battens,
What's
rafters.
under the roof.
What's
We
under
can
the
say
roof?
that,
That's
yeah.
right. So that's when we are going to talk about things like superstructures and roof windows even. So every single detail what you would need to know about.
Yeah, this is what we will cover in the following session. So see you back then. Should you have any queries or questions regarding this topic or others, please just send them us by email or send us a comment here.
One other thing what we wanted to talk about is that you might have seen that behind us there are some new things in the studio.
Our new studio.
We decided to build a more competitive studio to make this kind of webinars even more engaging and of higher quality. So if you are interested of how we are building something like that with our own bare hands and how a webinar looks like behind the scenes, then stay tuned for the next couple of minutes where we'll just show a quick show reel of how building this webinar studio looked like.
Yes, so let's see that and see you next time.
See you on Thursday.